I'm Aidan Doyle, CEO of Sligo Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to the Life in Sligo podcast in partnership with Sligo Chamber Skillnet and IT Sligo. Today I'm delighted to have Richard Kennedy as our guest. Richard is current EY Entrepreneur of the Year and CEO of Devenish Agri-Technology Company. A native of Sligo, Richard grew up and still lives in Eclair in South Sligo. Richard, you're very welcome and congratulations again on your success as EY Entrepreneur of the Year.
Thank you very much, Aidan. It's a great honour for me, I suppose, and I'm really pleased and lucky to have been awarded the EY accolade. So, but it's as I said during the ceremony, I suppose it's a reflection of our business and my colleagues as well. So I'm just the person that collects the award. I have to say it is a recognition of those, I suppose, more than anyone. But thanks very much for having me, Aidan, and I think it's a great initiative.
So, I suppose we will start off, Richard, and again, you've just alluded to it a little bit there, but, by asking you a little bit about the Entrepreneur of the Year, it is a great achievement. Like, what has this achievement meant to you, not only to you, but also to your company, Devenish?
Well, I suppose I could only recommend highly for any company that to apply for this award, because you have to be nominated and then you go through a process. But I have to say it has been an incredible process, far exceeding what my or our expectations were. And I have to give huge credit to EY and the work and effort and the what they commit to this. Now, okay, it builds their brand, but it also has phenomenal, value to the participants, because there's a network or alumni set up. There are, you look at yourself differently. So I really would recommend anyone to look to join this, because it's been very valuable. And as I said, the one abiding sense I have from it all is that it is far, far more than I ever expected. And, to answer your question, Aidan, and what does it mean to me, I suppose I'm kind of surprised by it, because we genuinely never thought we would win it. And then in winning it, suppose the recognition of a company that a lot of people probably didn't know or don't know, because it's a business-to-business company outside the sector, and that has been very valuable.
So, you mentioned about the process, the actual competition itself, and from any of us watching it on TV, it's a year-long process. So I can imagine at times it was very nerve-wracking. And, what was it like to be part of it? And I know it's a year-long process as a winner. So you have a very busy schedule this year. So what is it like to be part of all of that?
Well, it's been great again, but what it has meant, I suppose, is it seems to have had an intrinsic value. So from whether it's financial institutions, whether it's other businesses, whether it's competitors, no matter what it is, people kind of regard you differently, or certainly I get that sense. And I suppose with an element of probably surprise, and I suppose maybe disbelief in some cases, I suppose I'm not that well known in the business community in Sligo. So it has raised my profile in that, and as I think someone said recently, I don't know Richard, but I know his brother. From a business point of view in Sligo, because that would be Fintan, my brother in FBD. But I suppose then from a football point of view, people would know me as that Egypt that has the loud voice that shouts too much at GA matches. So the EY Entrepreneur of the Year might maybe there'd be a quizzical look on a lot of the people who know me in Sligo, thinking, oh, Jesus, how did that Egypt get that? I think it has had that impact. But genuinely, I suppose what I'd say, Aidan, is any time we have been as a business involved in business competitions, or I suppose putting yourself up against other businesses, or it really has had an incredibly positive effect. Not, people say, oh, well, you won. Well, yes, but there were lots of things we went for that we didn't win. But every one of them has moved us forward. It's made us look at ourselves differently. It's given you the chance to look at somebody else in another business and how they would perceive a situation. So one of the things we did was I did the IOD, which is an Institute of Directors diploma over the years, and that was tremendous. We've been involved, as I said, in other awards processes, and also anytime you get a chance to talk to other businesses, and it's why the Chamber is so valuable as a forum, as I see it in Sligo. And we were on that event in London there before the lockdown. And I have to say, it was incredible. It was just so valuable to see some of the businesses and the people and the enthusiasm behind them. So I think any opportunity to look outside, we spend an awful lot of time looking inside at our own businesses and looking at our customers and, our processes and the part of the chain we're in. It's a really valuable thing to step out and have a look at other stuff around. And then I suppose just to finish up, I suppose on the year, once you win the Entrepreneur of the Year, you then go on to the World Entrepreneur. And of course, that was supposed to be an event in Monte Carlo in June, but that is now going to be a virtual event. And again, so we're right in the middle of that, and that will, it's taken a bit of preparation, and it takes time away from the business. But as I said, it's really valuable.
You mentioned there, Richard, that you mentioned Sligo a couple of times. That you grew up Sligo and you still live here. So can you tell me a little bit about growing up, and also in terms of Sligo, what it is about Sligo and this place that people love?
Well, I suppose, as I said, Aidan, about the passion that I can't control at the side of a football pitch, that all reflects back on my grow and passion for Sligo. As I said, as you said, I'm from and live in Clare in County Sligo. It would be an interesting poll to do across Sligo, see how many people have actually from Sligo have been in Clare, because quite a lot of people haven't. It's literally on the road or on the way to, there isn't a passing trade. So, the road goes to Clare and on up to the Kilmactide Church and up past then into the Ox Mountains. So there isn't a passing trade. And my parents were both born and reared in this area. And my dad and his brother started a business, a wholesale confectioner's business. And I suppose Dad's initial time after he finished school, he went and served his time as a shop boy in Sligo, and then went on to buy a business and to be a wholesale confectionery business, which he based out of the village of Clare, and they distributed sweets and ice cream and minerals. I suppose that kind of business ethos was in our house all the time, because they sold the business and ultimately started a livestock mart, bought a farm, and I got, I suppose the livestock mart gave me my first taste of the business of agriculture. And I suppose that's where my real passion is. But to go back, and the reason I talk about Clare, Aidan, is because my dad, as I said, wanted to live here. And that was in the 40s, late 40s, early 50s, which were very tough times, 1940s and 1950s. And, he knew he had to bring business here or have a business that he could, take on from here. And that was the wholesale confectionery business. And himself and his brother, had customers from Limerick all the way to Strabane and up into Malin Head. And that's what they did. So, but they, they had to build a business out of here. And I suppose that was always my view too. My chosen, I suppose, path was in the animal nutrition business. And in doing that, I knew I'd have to travel. So initially, Jacqueline and I lived in Dublin. We then got the chance, because I was traveling so much, I said to my colleagues, look, I'm going to live in Sligo and travel from there. It doesn't matter where I start, because I travel so much. And I have to say that in 1996, late 96, early 97, we moved back here. And as I said in one of the pieces of coverage for the DY, I'd break stones before I'd leave Clare. This is where my heart is.
It's quite obvious that your parents had a big influence on your entrepreneurial path. And you mentioned, we know Devenish is headquartered in Belfast. So you obviously see the benefits of living in the Northwest and in Sligo in particular. So how does it work for you, and with the amount of travel that you do, that you still can come back to a base in Sligo and yet work globally? What are the benefits of living in Sligo and the Northwest, do you think?
Well, I think anybody who lives here would always tell you that there's no place like it. But sometimes you can't do what you need to do here. So, if you can make it work, there's no place like it. If you can't, then, that's Hobson's choice. So you got to move. But for me, from a family point of view, from a community point of view, we have a tremendous community here in Clare and Tullastrand. There's nothing falls into your lap, so you got to work for it. And we have a great spirit, great community. The GA club is at the heart of it. And I suppose that they were the things, my family, and the happiness and joy that I had when I was growing up here. I suppose that I wanted that for my family. And I think that was the most important thing. And funnily enough, a couple of years ago, our three kids, Oisin, Rian and Molly, all were in college in Dublin. So I did broach the subject one day that we should maybe move to Dublin for a couple of years and we could all live in Dublin. So I was in a majority of 1 out of 5 on that. And I was quickly told by the three of them, sure, our home is in Sligo. And I think that's the thing, this is where our heart is, but it is an incredible place. And, some of the work that the Chamber and Kieran Hayes are doing now, making it and advertising that or making it more obvious, making it easier to access both in terms of infrastructure and in terms of both, from an IT point of view and from a travel point of view or transport point of view is very important. I think one thing as I'm just talking and thinking out loud, Aidan, one of the reasons I was able to do this was by sheer luck, we managed to buy a house just beside where there was a telecoms box in Aclair. And Aclair was one of the last places that had got a direct dial. But if they had, they got the, and so that was, I remember actually when it was about 1986, 87, because I was in college. And, you had a wind-up phone until then. Now, people won't even know what a wind-up phone was. The upside of that was that we actually had quite a modern telecom box. And within 4 weeks of us moving into this house, I had 2 ISDN lines in back in 1997. So I had better IT connectivity than was in Sligo. And we have fibre here, so it's great. And that is, it's fundamental. And then the other aspect I threw in, and I think this is one of the upsides of COVID, the COVID pandemic, is that people actually now have tried this sort of thing, remote working, and it works. Now, you don't want what we have, complete and utter isolation or not moving out of the house. But I'll tell you one thing, I won't be doing half as much traveling. And I would have always thought I was, looking at this in the right way. And erring on the side of caution, but there's no question. I would say I'd be down 50% the amount of traveling I do.
So you mentioned remote working there, Richard. So, and we've seen the necessity of remote working that's been forced upon us over the last 4 to 5 weeks. This has resulted in business embracing new technology. So do you see more investment required in developing technology and more co-working centres for the regions, and in particular, in our own point of view, for the Northwest?
Well, I think the more investment, certainly, but that's in the infrastructure. Most people now have a phone, and a reasonably high standard of a phone. I have to say, Zoom works on a phone, Teams work on phones, any of the WebExes work on phones, and anybody, instead of a desktop, why wouldn't, companies are replacing their IT, why wouldn't they replace it with a laptop? And I think that's the piece. There is important aspects, in terms of office furniture and stuff like that. But I'm sure there are plenty of businesses around Sligo who would find very inventive ways of selling office wear, which I think is positive. But I do think the important thing will be the broadband infrastructure and the infrastructure around that, and the ability to provide consistent communications. But I think the other thing is probably going to be is a change in mindset at senior management level. We've probably had that in our business because as you rightly said, Aidan, we've grown the business over the years, and we've been headquartered in Belfast, but we also have our Global Innovation Centre in Meath, and we would have people scattered throughout Ireland, but also through the UK and the US. So we've had remote working to a point, and it suits some people and it doesn't suit others. I think we've been kind of set up for that. Now, it's interesting. We would have probably maybe 45 people in an office in Belfast, or in a series of offices in Belfast, and they are all now remote working. Is it ideal? No. Is it better than where it was? Yes, I would say. So it's better than where we were, and we've been pushed into that. That's kind of where we need to open up our minds and see what's the art of the possible on some of these things, because I think it really does get more from your people and our people when the work setting is right.
As you say there at the outset, we said that you are the CEO of Devenish, and it is a global agri-technology company. So can you tell me a little bit more about Devenish, from the farm to fork? And I know the term you use is soil to society. So where do Devenish and where do you fit into the food chain?
Well, I suppose what I trained as and what we are at our core is animal nutritionists. And I suppose in every ton of feed that's manufactured for any animal, whether it's a dog, a cat, a pig, a chicken, a fish, a camel, anything, every ton of feed needs vitamins and minerals. So there's roughly in every ton about 5 kilos, which is 0.5% of vitamins and minerals and additives, natural additives, just natural additives, because we're experts in antibiotic-free food production. So natural additives, and that 5 kilos or 0.5% in every ton is what we manufacture. So we influence a huge amount of tons. For every ton of product we manufacture, there's another 200 to 300 tons of feed made out of that. And in that 5 kilos, we can influence the health of the animal, how it performs, and we design the diet around that. So we are designers of diets. We manufacture premix, as they call specialty premixes, vitamin and mineral premixes, and we also then advise and work with the producers or the customers' customers to ensure that the nutrition is aligned with what they demand or require. So as you rightly say, we talk about the fact that we go from soil to society. And our ethos is, Aidan, that we ensure the most effective and efficient utilization of nutrients in the production of meat, milk and eggs. And we do that in soil also, as well as feed. So we turn that One Health from soil to society. And one of the products we have developed, because we had to address the market from a different position when we started this business, because most of our competitors are large multinationals and they have proprietary positions on nutrients. So they would own the supply chain around a particular nutrient. And we would find it very difficult to compete with that unless we disrupted or we came from a different point. We would very much look at using science and innovation and research, and we spend around 30 million a year, or invest 30 million a year in R&D. And that R&D we apply really quickly, and that's, I suppose, where we've focused our efforts most, is to make that research and innovation commercially applicable and then apply it in real time. One of our customers is Western Brand, who are a brilliant company here in the west of Ireland. And we have numerous others, Revo, etc. So that's what we do. And as I said, we term it One Health from soil to society.
We are in unprecedented times with the COVID-19 pandemic. So has this affected your own business on a global scale, and how have you overcome this if you are affected by it?
Well, I suppose it has in a positive way initially, because we are part of central services, because animals won't survive if they don't have their micronutrients and minerals and vitamins, which is what we do. And we've seen an increase in demand in March. But also we saw, a kind of frenetic or chaotic response initially, which was around Aidan, were people safe? Now, we took a very proactive stance. So we immediately, when probably before government guidelines, we had sent people home. Anybody who was living with or close to a vulnerable person, we just sent them home and said to go work at home. And as I said, we tend to have, we'd have a lot of people who would work from home anyway. We've had that kind of ethos in the business, remote working. But then things settled down, and it's interesting. People went from saying, because in the various countries that we're in, so Northern Ireland and the UK, are obviously had one process which was 80% of people's salaries. Here you had the scheme that the government implemented, which I think is 75, and then in the US people got a chunk of money. So they're all different schemes, and they all had different impacts, and some of them had unintended consequences, which were, we're seeing that in the US at the moment, that people are, particularly in our customers' businesses, are just not turning up for work. But also, what we found with my colleagues is that, we kind of really like working in this business, and people are much more inclined to want to work than to be, as they call it, furloughed or in Northern Ireland. So that has been very positive. But we don't know what's coming, because I know, speaking to some people in the US yesterday, meat is becoming very scarce in the US because the processing plants are closing down because they can't get enough of people to run those production lines. The difficulty with that is, it's hearsay. We don't know how it'll affect us. As I said to you, meat has become scarce, but it's also got very expensive. So, ground beef in the US yesterday was $6 a pound. Now, they would never have seen it at that. That's probably two and a half times the price it normally would be, and you kind of had to queue for it. So there are effects, but then there's the timing aspect on that, Aidan. How long will that last for? People will come back to work. People will be released out of lockdown in some format. The way we've taken it and the way we've looked at it is, let's play each day as it comes. And that's all we can do, and do the very best that we can. Because most of this is outside our own control, outside our own influence. And the one thing that I've tried to do as much as possible through my business life is to, not to worry or be concerned about the things you can't control or influence, and focus your energies and your efforts on the things you can. And, tomorrow will come. And if we're healthy and safe, we'll be able to deal with tomorrow.
So, Richard, in your opinion, then, would this be a time for reflection for businesses? And what would your tip be for business, whether large or small, to prepare for when the COVID-19 crisis passes?
Well, I'm always slow to say, oh, well, I have an answer, because everybody's business and perspective is different, and position. I do think it is a real opportunity to consider, what your strategy for your business is. Why are you in this business? Whatever business you're in, why are you in it? What gets you up in the morning? Is it drudgery? Is it does it really put a spring in your step? Is it what you want to be doing? And then the way you are doing what you want to do, is there a better way? Because I think there always is. And as I said to you earlier, for me, I'm kicking myself for the amount of travel I did, and how I didn't use technology to the maximum like I should have, and I would have been much more effective. So for me, it's been very valuable. Also, one upside for me is that I suppose I'm at home with the family, and the family, we've, as I said, Jacqueline and I have 3 in the crew here, and it's given us great time. Downside of that is there's no football. So you reflect on these things. We'll deal with what's coming, and as you rightly say, I think it's really good advice from you. Is we should all reflect on our businesses now. See how can we do it better. See how we can do it more efficiently, and can we make it better for ourselves and for our colleagues.
I suppose we've got to look to the future as well, and the way we do business is changing, and it's evolving at a rapid scale, but also the skills that are needed. So Sligo Chamber Skillnet, for example, we fund many leadership and project management and more recently crisis management courses. So in your view, what kind of training would be required to support people and businesses for the future of work?
Yeah, well, I think, as you rightly say, we can look at it from our own point of view and say, well, our business, what's going to happen? We better be prepared for it. And, it's that entrepreneurial piece, I think, that ethos that is very important. And I think in leadership terms, it's something around the assessment of risk, because I think, risk is going to be key here. If we look at how this rolls, everybody is concerned about their liquidity and where's the cash flow and how cash flow are going to work out of this. Now, I heard a very good story from Harry Hughes the other day. Harry is the man who leads Port West in Westport. And he said a local businessman, retailer, had said, Harry, he says, all the big businesses, they're into EBITDA and they're into, turnover and cash flow. And this, he says, it's not turnover that's important. It's what's left over is important. And I think it was a very good analysis, and we're kind of sitting there wondering, well, what will be left over? And in terms of that, banks are going to have to look at it in a different way. Financial models that we took for gospel are going to be thrown out and have to be reconstructed. And therefore, I think it's that entrepreneurial, opportunistic view. So it's an entrepreneurial spirit. And there's nothing better, as I said earlier, Aidan, than the chamber and pulling companies together, different companies, people seeing how other people are interacting. So I think that's where there'll be value, because there will be massive opportunities out of this. I think for Sligo, back to what you asked me, anybody who comes here wants to stay here. Go to Strandhill, Inniscrone, Ochras, up the Ox Mountains. We have everything that anybody wants when you look at what millennials are looking for: quality of life. Now, if we provide the infrastructure to get them here, for them to work here, then we can build much more around Sligo, because we have something that can't be replicated. We have a fabulous place to live with all the amenities. So imagine surfing, running, hill walking, the beaches we have. There's more bikes on the road than there is cars on the road these days. That's the opportunity. And a network, and a collegiate collaborative network around Sligo, which you guys and Niall McAvoy and the IT and the guys there are building. And I think that's what we need. Encourage entrepreneurs, encourage people to have a go. There will be a different or a new normal, and no better people than the people of Sligo and the Northwest to embrace it if we have the opportunity to do it.
Richard, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast with your insights and words of wisdom. And there's no doubt you've given our members a great deal of food for thought. So I thank you once again for your participation. And it was a pleasure to talk to you on our first Life at Sligo podcast.
Thanks a million, Aidan, and keep up the great work the Sligo Chamber are doing. I think it really has been and continues to be invaluable for Sligo and for the people of Sligo.